my team looking out for me. Thank you. Um, and so we're going to be hearing from folks who have done a lot of that mindset work and are creating new things from a liberated mindset. We're going to hear from folks who are really embarking on it and what that process looks and feels like. And again, I want to invite you to like bring your voices to the mix here. So I think most of y'all know me, but for those who don't, I'm Nicole Cruz. My pronouns are she, her. I am the CEO and lead coach of Nicole Cruz Coaching. We are entering our 4th year of business, and we have primarily served first and second generation immigrants of color. That has been our focus. That is who we love to serve, and I'm just so excited to see y'all here. I would love to also introduce Patty, my co-host. She is a Living Bravely coach, and she is going to be supporting me. She's going to be co-hosting this event with me today. Patty, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Hello. I'm going to tell a little bit more of my story later, but for now, what I would love to let you all know is that, again, my name is Patty Daleg. I am a self-love and compassion coach for women of color. And I am excited to be here. I also have the honor during the day of working on 2 Broadway shows as the director of equity and diversity and inclusion, one of which is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And all of that kind of story of getting there, you'll get a little bit of juice later. But for now, I would love for everyone to introduce yourselves, name, pronouns, maybe where you're zooming in from. And if you could tell everyone in the group, what was the best meal that you've had all week? So again, my name is Patty, pronouns she, her. I'm zooming in from Newark, New Jersey, my new home. And the best meal that I've had all week was Brazilian barbecue this weekend in my new neighborhood. So if you would all share in the chat, that would be great. And I can read them out. Oh, I see the pensive like faces like, oh, that is all about what food for sure. And also, we're also talking about food, but I also tried caipirinhas, it's a Brazilian drink similar to a mojito without mint. So if you're ever wanting to try something new, that is also a thing.
Man, this is a more difficult question.
Let's start, you know what, as you're thinking, yes, thank you, Tessa. Can't remember what I've eaten this week, fair. If you're stuck on what's the best meal that you've had, go ahead and just give us your name, pronouns, where you're zooming in from. Also, if you can't remember, that's also totally real. Yes, Doritos. Those are my weakness. Thank you, Tessa. Courtney from Florida. Gosh. Yes, the tofu Thai green curry. I'm getting hungry now. Ria from Chicago. Louisiana style shrimp. Tintin, nice to see you from North Carolina. Ooh, vanilla yogurt, bananas, berries, honey. See, we can't be in survival mode if we're eating all this. This is amazing. Erica from Boston. There's a lot of like Thai soups happening in the room. Christine Joy. Hi, Christine Joy. Yum, sushi, beef noodle soup, oysters. Brisket. Oh, yes. Love it. Okay, as these kind of roll in, we're going to talk about why we're here. Thank you, Kathleen. Spicy vegan. I was waiting for a vegan thing to come in. Nice. So we're here today to talk about moving from survival to liberation. it's a weird day to be doing this, right? Because 2 years ago, the country shut down. We're all forced to isolate and like basically just literally try and survive, like try not to get COVID. 1 year ago today, the world woke up to the realization that Asian Americans and particularly Asian women are being targeted in violent attacks. And the world continues to recognize and hopefully try to mitigate the harm caused against Black, Indigenous, people of color, against women, against trans and non-binary people. And in the midst of a world of violence, of war, of straight up just like trying to get through the day, we have to ask, is it possible to have more than that, right? More than just trying to get through the day. Can joy exist? Can change happen? Can I see it within myself, within my community? So that's what this conversation is about today. It's about like literally daring to have a talk, a discussion about how we can move towards liberation. We are audacious today to be in this Zoom room, to be imagining our own freedom in the midst of all the shit happening in the world. And excuse me, I would dare say that like in the midst of all of this happening externally, why would we want to also have that like within ourselves, in our own minds, in our bodies, in our cells? Why do we want to be mirroring the survival mode of the world when there possibly is another option? So thank you for being here. Thank you for venturing in a day like today, like bravely into this work. I'll turn it back over to Nicole to talk about what that actually means.
Oof, Patty, I just got like fired up. How are y'all feeling? How are y'all feeling? Drop, I don't know if there's like that fire emoji, fire emoji reaction. If you're feeling that. Yeah, what an honor to be here in community talking about this. Challenging survival. And you know, so I talk a lot about survival and liberation in the work, in this work that we do as a community. And a lot of times I hear like, well, what does that mean actually? What is that? And survival might feel a little more at the ready for us, but what does that liberation actually look like? And I want to offer that you really get to dictate what that looks like for you. What I've seen in our community of immigrants and immigrant descendants is it's showing up in a few ways for us. So for a lot of us, our families were in survival mode a lot, where they had to really like need to prioritize their basic needs of safety and food and water and shelter and just really the necessities to live. And and we are so grateful for that, right? So grateful for that. And I truly believe that our parents, our elders, our ancestors didn't do all that so that we could keep surviving, that we could stay in this mode. And so I feel like the best way to honor that is to actually explore what is beyond survival. So I'm going to talk about a few ways that comes up in mindset, and then Patty's going to talk about how that shows up in like embodiment. So mindset wise, a few themes that I've heard from our community is survival mode, really prioritizing or really coming from like a fear-based place of like thinking the worst case scenario, planning for the worst case scenario, listening to that fear voice that comes up that says, don't do that thing that's new and scary and unfamiliar. Let's keep doing what we're doing. Even though it doesn't feel great, even though we know there's more out there for us, this is familiar and safe, and we need to prioritize that, right? And so this can show up in a number of different ways in our life. Maybe we don't go for the career that we actually want to do. Maybe we say yes and people please when we want to say no. There's also this tendency to change and alter ourselves in order to fit in to whatever group that we are in, right? That's a survival technique because our ancestors had to fit in enough to get that job, to make that money. And so we kind of take on this shape-shifting, like chameleoning thing that happens of like, okay, in this workspace, I'm going to talk a certain way. I'm going to say certain things. I'm going to hide parts of myself. And we get so good at it. We get so good. I was so good at it that it becomes second nature, that we don't realize how much energy it actually takes. How much energy it actually takes to splice ourselves depending on who we're with. And what would it look like if we didn't have to do that, if we chose not to do that, if we could show up fully as ourselves? And one of the last ways that it shows up is in a lot of scarcity thinking. I actually just had a group session about this like an hour ago, of just really focusing on what's in front of us, our fixed circumstances, it being really difficult to believe in what's possible and what's more out there for us, because a lot of times what we saw modeled for us was survival. So it can be really difficult to believe there is something beyond it for us. Let me know in the chat if you're feeling this, if this is resonating, if this is like feeling relatable. Yes, thanks, K Short. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, y'all. Yeah, we're in good company, right? And we are not the originators of these beliefs, these survival beliefs. We inherited them. And hopefully that also invites some like self-compassion into the mix as we explore these for ourselves. Yeah, Tessa, I feel that. Yeah. What would it look like for me to fully show up as myself? Do I even know? So real. So real. Yeah. And we are going to explore that. We're going to explore that as we explore like what liberation looks like for us. So Patty, I'll turn it over to you to talk about how it shows up in other ways for us.
Yeah. So when we think about the embodiment of survival mode versus liberation, there's this kind of big word of what even is embodiment. And I feel like there's a whole kind of like, the word for me is like, it's like a co-opting of it, because we try to make it feel like embodiment is this thing that's so far away that we have to like pay $5,000 to embody. And as a coach, of course, I'm like selling resources to talk about that. But also embodiment is really simple. It's really just like when your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions are all moving towards one thing, you are embodying that thing. And so when we are in survival mode, right, our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are already aligned towards a thing, which is about safety, which is about survival. So what does that look like in the body, right? Imagine you're in survival mode. Maybe you're feeling in that today. Maybe you can imagine your parents or something. And then imagine that person or that version of you trying something new. And notice what comes up in the body. Maybe your heart races. Maybe you feel a pit in your stomach. Maybe there's a sense of fear. Maybe you freeze or you choke up. It's hard to maybe even move. Whatever is new and therefore unsafe literally feels unsafe for the body, because the experiences that we learn to survive become the conditions upon which our continued survival depends. I'm going to say that again. So the experiences that we learn to survive, i.e. immigration, i.e. violence, i.e. So many other pieces, right? Trauma, whatever. The experiences that we learn to survive, or that our ancestors learned to survive, become the same conditions that we replicate so that our body knows that it can continue to survive. Because the body's like, oh, that thing, I know how to do that. I know how to do the same job for 40 years. I know to do the thing that is safe. But do I know how to do this new thing? No, not necessarily. But in the embodiment of liberation, again, thoughts, feelings, and actions related, like moving towards that thing, right? So what if a sense of safety is all we are striving for in survival mode, in liberation, you already take that safety kind of for granted, right? You feel so safe within yourself that you can show up in any space and feel okay. There's this sense of neutrality, right? The heart doesn't race anytime something new pops up. There's no overwhelm. It's a sense of openness, of receptivity. And you can associate this, right, with the heart rate slowing down. I can feel even now my shoulders going back and down a little bit as I think about this kind of embodiment. A lightness, or maybe even a lack of sensation in the gut, just a knowing. And that, right, like those are completely different ways to be in a body. Give me a 1 in the chat if that resonates. Just a 1. Yeah, thank you. And there's a question here. I don't know if we want to do questions right now, Nicole, or if you want to wait.
Sure. If you, yeah.
So Heather asks, how would we protect that new vulnerability with a new coping mechanism besides hiding? Yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to talk about today, right? That's like, okay, so how do we even like start the new thing if the new thing is scary? It reminds me of like, how do you get your first job when you need like 10 years of experience kind of thing? Like it feels like when we're talking about liberation, it's like, oh, I need 10 years of experience of doing new things. But then how do you do that if you haven't done one new thing? That is exactly what this conversation is about. And so I'm hoping that like the community can bring answers to that. Nicole, do you want to call on the group for a group share?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's thank you for breaking down like embodiment too, and like it doesn't have to be this like foreign like concept. And what's coming up for me right now as you were saying that is like this step into liberation is also a step towards self-trust, right? Because if we've been in survival mode for so long, we don't really know what that feels like to not be in it, what it looks like to not be in it. And so part of it is like trusting, okay, I'm going to trust that thing inside of me, that pull inside of me that says, this ain't it. Like that says there's something more. So I just want to like bring that forward and appreciate so much the trust that you had in yourself to just show up and like start questioning and have this conversation. Okay, so we want to create space to hear from the group, to hear from you all. And so we're really curious to hear, like, as we're talking through survival and liberation, some reflection on like, what did survival look like for your parents? How does survival show up in you right now, if you're open to sharing? I want to invite you to either type in the chat, or if there's a few folks that are feeling open to share aloud, we would love to hear from you. Yep, Tintin competition. Yeah, that resonates. Yeah. Yeah, Tiff.
I'll speak on it, on like just thinking about how my parents, what they did to survive, which is they really kind of made their family like a mafia. Um, in their heads, it's like we only depend on each other, no one else. And even if their family are the ones that are causing the trauma, they're gonna set aside everything that's their own personal identity so that they could keep the family happy. Because only you can trust your family. That was the mentality. So it's like, I know for me, working with you before, I've been liberated from like that kind of thinking. And so in my head, for them, it's confusing and very different for me to tell them how I'm finding my own tribe and and doing different things and like trusting other people and trusting myself, when it should be like, no, like the family kind of dictates that. So that's how I saw it with my parents.
Ooh, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Tiffany. Yeah, so survival looked like really a close circle of like who we can trust, and a lot of people that we just can't trust, right? And and I'm hearing a lot of, in your shift, right, allowing yourself to expand that circle, and also just like put more trust in yourself that you'll be okay also.
Yeah, and just the fact that I even questioned, like even considered other ways of thinking or questioned them, you know, because they, in their heads, they survived and came to the US. We need to treat them as the model. But then, like, or for me personally, like growing up here, it's like, well, I question, well, I'm here and I think that we should switch the model, you know? So it's very different for them switching from surviving to thriving. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I would offer, it gets to look different. Yeah, for everyone. Because you have tools and an understanding that they probably don't. Totally. Yeah. Okay, I want to read some things here from the chat. Code switching and silence. Yeah, I feel that, Courtney, a lot of code switching, right? That assimilation. Lizzie, career and success. Christine Joy, yep, family over everything. Elisa, survival of my parents that has been passed down to me looks like a stable career, i.e. a job with a pension, health benefits, which holds me back from putting more time and self-trust in entrepreneurship or going part-time. Yeah, Vivian saying parents really drilled in not taking risks and pursuing financial stability. Yeah, yeah. All right. Want to create space if there's one more person who'd like to speak aloud to what's coming up for them around this. Yeah, Sharon.
Hi, good afternoon. Oh, has anyone ever like grew up in a religious household? Because I feel like with those survival tactics. And my parents and my mom's side of the family, they're all like missionaries and pastors. And I was the only one who didn't want to go to seminary school because in America, you can't really preach religion without stepping on any toes. Um, and I think the survival tactics today, how it plays out, it's like they always make me pray, or they make me bless the food, or they make me deliver the word. And even though I was the most rebellious in our religion, like they see it happening in me. But I don't know. Like I think being the only one not serving in church right now is what, well, one, being burnt out from serving all my life, and then now just like serving offline, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So just like trying to be open to beyond their survival mechanism and how they got to America through missions. I think I'm learning how to not be too religious, but like, I guess, alignment and like thriving vocab versus just heavy scripture.
Mm, yeah. Religion plays such a big part in a lot of our families. And what I'm hearing from you, Sharon, is not that you're like rejecting it or like anything, but you're like finding your own way of how it feels good to show up for you in that. And not feeling like you have to keep going along with the survival tools and leaning on religion in a certain way that really served your parents and your ancestors. Yeah. Hmm. All right. So we wanted to bring that into just reflection, and I invite you to like continue reflecting on this beyond today, um, to really just start to understand like, okay, where did some of this come from? Like how I'm operating now, where did it come from? And like not in a blamey, like, oh, it's like their fault type of way, but really just with an understanding of like, oh, okay, that is what they needed to, those are the tools that they needed. Those are the tools they had. Those are the tools that they used on me. And of course, those are the tools that I have now. And I can choose new tools. I can choose to learn something different, and that's okay. So I want to actually shift gears a little bit, and I really appreciate all the shares, because I know this is not like fun light stuff. Sometimes, we're talking about like some deep stuff here. I wanted to like talk to some folks in the community to show like examples of like what liberation could look like for us, right? Because I think also sometimes we see it like on IG or like in very like white dominant spaces of like freedom and expansion looking like a certain way that doesn't quite resonate with us given our lived experiences. So we've actually invited a few folks to share their stories. So of like, yeah, what does it look like tangibly in practice in our community? So Ria, I wanted to invite you to share your story with the group. Ria was a former client. She was in Living Bravely cohort 3, I think. And I just, yeah, I appreciate her story so much. So Ria, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, I was hesitant at first to join Living Bravely because I'd never really spent some time to really invest in myself. And so I have 2 children, 2 little kids, and for them, it's kind of like with buying clothes. I'm like, I want to buy them like the newest, the nicest new things, and I'm like wearing clothes that are older than them. And so I was like, to invest in life coaching, I don't know, but we were in the beginning of the pandemic, and I thought this was like the right time for me to do some more self work, more internal work. And I was newly in a leadership role as a manager, and really wanted to take my leadership into a place of just authenticity for my own ways of leading a team, and to do it with confidence and just courage. And one of the things I really remember is the idea of radical responsibility. And I think that has really changed the way that I lead and the way that I work. As a mother and former counselor and just a natural empath, I think that I want to take care of others. I want to make sure that they're okay. I want to, just not even just like the hospitality, right? Just like taking care of their feelings, and realizing that that was not my responsibility to take care of one's feelings, to make sure that they were okay at all times, especially when it comes into like a workplace setting. And so just working on that, I just worked on that in my own performance goals in my at my place of work, to work on radical responsibility and what that means for me to trust that if someone wants to bring up something to me, and if I've offended them, that they would have enough trust in our relationship that they would come to me and let me know. And so I've been practicing that for the last 2 years. It's still something I really try to incorporate into my leadership style. And throughout Living Bravely, hearing from all the other phenomenal women in the group who are mostly entrepreneurs or coaches, or in these roles of leadership as well, that I had not even thought about becoming an entrepreneur myself. And throughout the time and working with Nicole, I did Living Bravely, and now I'm going to forget the name of the next group that you had, Thrive Hive. And
Yeah.
yeah, that I really just took a leap of faith on myself to start my own company and my own parent coaching company. It's always something that I brought up in coaching with Nicole. It's something I'm passionate about, having a multiracial, multi-faith family. That it is something that I talk about often, and I want to help other families too. So that just, the work that I did was really about believing in myself and having the confidence to know that I'm capable of helping others too. And not that I have to have it all figured out. I don't have to be an expert in everything and have all the answers to everything, but holding the space for others and helping them to get to where they need to go is really what I can do, and the role that I can play for others. And so radical responsibility still plays out into all of that. And just recently having an incident at work where someone had to go to the source with me, realizing that it is not my responsibility also to resolve trauma in my direct reports either, right? And so I can have empathy, but I don't have to feel responsible for someone else's feelings. And so that letting go is like a burden I don't have to have. And so that's something I'm continuing to work on, but it is definitely freeing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. That is amazing. Y'all, let's show Ria some love in the chat. I also want to invite you all, use the chat to connect with each other, to share if something resonated with you with what someone shared. And Ria, I want to just acknowledge, to go from a place of feeling like you have to take care of everyone to now a place of choice around it, of I'm going to choose to let this go. I'm going to choose to let you take care of yourself. And then freeing up that energy to now pour into like supporting families on navigating like multi-faith, interracial families and their identities around that is amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. Yeah. Love it. I also wanted to invite Vivian to share her story. She was in Living Bravely cohort 5, I think.
5 or 6, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yes, 5.
I just so resonated with Vivian when she entered into this work together, and I just love her story so much. So Vivian, I'll hand it over to you to share.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, I actually had to like go back and look at my journaling notes from like when I first started Living Bravely to like really remember like what it was I was feeling at the time and like what I was looking for. But I remember like now I was looking for like really a couple of main things. Like I think I was at a time where like in my career and like what I wanted to do in life, I felt just really lost. Like I enjoyed my job and I knew how to like do well in it, but I didn't fully like I didn't feel like fulfilled by it. And I didn't know what I wanted to do next either. Like I couldn't decide between like wanting to step up into leadership, wanting to like start my own business, wanting to like drop my entire field and just learn something totally new. I really was like all over the place and had no idea because I had a lot of different things I was interested in. And then I also just like didn't quite trust my own opinion on stuff. So I kept on asking other people for their opinions and their approval for things and kind of just being really easily influenced by others. I wanted my parents' approval a lot, as well as like just the approval of my peers and friends and stuff. And then the other thing was that I also just really wanted a deeper connection with people. Because at the time, I think I felt like I didn't really know how to open up to people well. I think I saw Tessa had posted in the chat too of like, what does showing up as your full self really look like? And for me at the time, I like literally had no idea because when I was interacting with other people, I could feel myself like hiding and kind of closing off and not talking very much about myself. Even though I like loved my job, for example, whenever people asked me about it, I would kind of like brush it off or like give a one-line thing and like try to not talk about it at all. It felt really weird, almost as if I was ashamed about it. And like I felt like I should be doing something cooler or more interesting to be worthy of people's time. So there was a lot of this like fear of judgment happening in my head. And I like hadn't posted anything online in like 4 years at that point. Like I was just like very much scared of like, what are people going to think? And like very aware of like how I showed up to other people. And so I think those are like the two main things I like went to you for, because I was like, oh, I love that Living Bravely was a community thing and done in a group. Because at the time too, a lot was going on in the world. And I started to realize like, I didn't have a lot of friends that I connected deeply with anymore. And I missed hanging out with other women of color. At that time now I'm in like an interracial relationship still, but like a lot of my friends were also like white too. And so I just didn't feel like I had people that looked like me and like related to me on other issues that I could like really talk to. So yeah, I joined Living Bravely. And it was kind of like a gut feeling that I should join it too when I did. And I'm so glad I did. Because I feel like I learned so much from it that a lot of the tools I like carry forward with me now. And so I guess like a couple examples of like what life kind of looks like now is that I would say like a lot of these thoughts and fears and doubts, they still exist actually, but they don't stop me from doing things anymore. Like now I feel much more comfortable and like open sharing about myself to other people. I feel so much more comfortable taking risks with both work and like my personal life decisions. And I think a lot of it came from one, like getting to know myself through this program and like being seen and held by all of the other amazing, inspiring women that are in the program too. And then also the radical responsibility that Ria kind of talked about in terms of like, I am not responsible for what other people think. I have no control over like what their thoughts or actions are, but I can control whether or not that affects what I do, or what I think about myself. And I think there was like a moment when I was like reading another book for work, actually, where everything just kind of clicked from the months that we had been talking about it and what the book was talking about too. But the line that Nicole, you always say about how like not everyone is going to like mangoes, but mangoes are like really delicious, but not everyone's gonna like them. Like suddenly everything just like clicked when I was reading the book and thinking back to everything, whereas like, yeah, I don't need everybody to like me. It's okay to be disliked. And yeah, and I think just like after having gone through a lot of that, now how I feel is just like I have a lot more room to experiment and make mistakes. So for example, I had started a blog a while back and like actually shared about it, posted it publicly, where as I think before, I probably would have kept it secret for like 5 years until it becomes really successful before I share it, and probably like not even continue doing it or something like that. But this time I like shared it almost right away. And then halfway through, I just changed my mind and I was like, oh, this actually doesn't feel aligned for like what I want to create right now anymore. And normally that type of changing my mind would be something that like, oh, this is going to look really bad. But it didn't anymore. It didn't feel that way. And I felt really free to like play around with like how it is that I continue to serve my main vision and like goal. I didn't feel like tied down to like one way of doing things. And now I feel like, okay, I have room to like experiment, play. It's okay if I fail in one thing. And it's okay if people see that too. Yeah. And I just overall like, I feel like I don't place as much emphasis on like, I need to find like the right next thing for me anymore. Like I love my work. I still don't really know like what the exact next step is for me in terms of like the long-term end all be all, but I don't think I need to have that anymore. Like I like what I do. I know that like there is a next step for me that I want to try out, but if that one's not it, then there's another step I can try too. And I don't place much emphasis on like my work and everything that I do is what defines my worth for other people anymore. That was like probably the biggest thing that I realized, like just me showing up as myself at work is enough to have an impact on other people. And it's starting to show. Like people will come up to me and like tell me, I love that you did this and this and this. And I didn't, it's not like I had to become a leader, quote unquote, or like start a new project or anything. It was just like me showing up as myself and that allowing other people to feel comfortable to show up as themselves too.
Ooh. Oh, Vivian, thank you for sharing. Like, that as you were talking through that, like it just felt so expansive and just like, oh, I get to just be me and I get to just show up and that could be enough. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Vivian. I super
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah. And as we're hearing from folks, what I also want to ground us in is this path to liberation isn't linear and there's no arrival. So I think sometimes we feel bad if we're like, oh yeah, I'm taking all these steps towards liberation. And then, oh gosh, I backslid and I listened to the fear. And then I went to like my old survival patterns. That's okay. That's supposed to happen. These are deeply ingrained beliefs within us. And so, of course, it's going to take practice to do something different, to try something new. And we can always get back towards moving towards liberation. Oh, I love all these stories. Patty, I would love to create space to hear more of your story, for you to share your story with the group.
Thank you. It's funny because I in a past life I have written speeches for an elected official, and so I like prepared for today, but it's actually not feeling right. So I'm just gonna say what's on my heart. So full disclosure, I was in Living Bravely cohort two. Okay, two. And Nicole and I have this like funny circular relationship, which I like totally dig. I'm also now Nicole's life coach, and I'm also a Living Bravely coach. So that like disclosure and like full circle moment is just something that I just want to name. And a thing that like very concretely for me tells me this like journey, or like shows me that I've been on this journey from survival to liberation, is one that is an intergenerational story. And it has to do with money. This is something that I worked on when I was in Living Bravely, and so Elisa knows this because we were in the cohort together. My parents were childhood sweethearts. They started dating, they're like Cory and Topanga, if you know Boy Meets World. They started dating when they were like 5 years old. And they got married young and immigrated here to the US right when my mom finished college. And so they had no idea how to navigate money. No idea. To this day, my dad doesn't touch it at all, and he allows my mom to just like manage all of it. What that means for me is that my family actually took debt out in my name, which is apparently, I learned later, kind of common for people of color, and for immigrant communities, where parents will utilize their children's like credit line or whatever. And so I had a ton of debt in my name. It's something that would, my blood would boil every time I had to ask them to make a payment, because you know this is in my name. I'm the one who's like ultimately responsible for it. But it was not my debt, and so it was this whole kind of like thing with my mom. And I will tell you, like, to be very transparent, there were like at least 10 accounts, all with different due dates and all of that. And so this was a constant conversation, and at one point this was the only conversation that I was having with my mom. A text of like, blah 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 is due, what's the minimum? And that was really hard for a long time, because I needed my mom in other ways, and I needed to be with family in a different way, and it was really hard. And at the same time, I could not blame my mom for doing this, because in her survival mode, there was not time to really be financially literate. For other people, financial literacy is a huge part of liberation, right? Like people save and save and save. For my family, it was very different. There was a conversation from very young of, we will buy that when we have money, right? And at some point, it didn't become, we will buy that when we have money. It's, we will pay for it when we have money. By, I want to say 2018 or so, I had more than $30,000 of credit card debt that was not mine. And like my heart races as I think about those moments, right? Like these moments of like, you know, when's the due date? Can you pay a little bit more? Like, you know, this is gonna just the minimum. Like, how long is this gonna happen? Those kinds of conversations. And you know, all of our conversations around radical responsibility, all our conversations around like, what does it mean to have like intergenerational stuff in Living Bravely? It took a little bit of time to settle. And after, I think, I'm like fuzzy on the timeline, because again, this is like a challenging thing for me. At some point, I was doing a yoga practice at night. I'm also a yoga teacher. I was doing a yoga practice at night. I was just like trying to move through some stuff. And this question came to me of, how long would it take if I just paid that off myself? How long would it take if I just was like, you know what? You've done so much for me, Mom. I will pay off this debt. And the answer was 18 months. I was like, I thought that I was going to be in this for the rest of my adult life, and it can be done in a year and a half. Yeah, like, of course I'll do that. And so I did that. I paid it off. for the sake of my relationship with my mother, for the sake of my relationship with myself, for my own mental health, for my own kind of freedom to just like not have to have those kinds of conversations anymore, that it was like this whole new take on radical responsibility, because like, who's responsible here even, right? But I was like, you know what? It's not my fault, but it is in my name. And like, I don't want this dead for the next generation either, whether I have kids or not. And so that was a few years ago. Last October 2021, it was all done. I was completely debt free. And today I have like $20,000 in savings, which is like the craziest thing ever. Like, I've never had savings before my life. Yeah, so and I can have like actual conversations with my mom. Like, I can talk to my mom about like the dogs and the weather and like little things without having to be like, you owe me money, you know? So that's my story. There's obviously so much more left in like to do, right? Like, I would love to buy a home one day. I would love to get rid of my student loan debt. I would love to have a perfect credit score, like all that stuff. But yeah, like that, just that question, I think, is this moment where we can be liberated. This, just the question of like, what else is possible here? Like, does it have to be this way? And the moment we kind of start to entertain it, oh, it's a game changer. Oh, Erica, my mom was so grateful. In fact, we actually did a little bit of an exchange. I asked her to pay for my yoga teacher training, which was like a sliver of what was owed. And so I was like, I'm going to pay this off over time if you just like give me this lump sum in like a few months. And she was like, oh yeah, totally down. And now it's like not even a conversation.
Oof, Hattie, thank you for sharing. Especially around like a money story. Oof, that goes deep. So I really appreciate your transparency around that, and how powerful to just make a choice to change your situation. And for the sake of your relationship, like, and to clear that. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, yep. So I want to share a little bit of my story. I want to be mindful of time too, because I want to create space. I want to create space for your voices. So for me, pre or deep in survival, I really operated from fear. Fear was my go-to. Fear was, sometimes when I describe fear, like fear was like my cozy companion, like always there, always consistent, always like I could go to it. So I did a lot of things, from people pleasing. I stayed in really bad situations that were not healthy for me. I stayed in abusive relationship. I stayed in a job that just like soul draining for 11 years, because I was so scared to do something different. I was so terrified of failing, of judgment, of just feeling, just feeling like I couldn't live my own life. And so it got to a point where I just knew something had to change. I was like 32. I was crying under the covers of my bed. I was like, what is going on? And I made the choice to really change the trajectory of my life, where I quit my job, quit my 6-figure corporate job. I packed up my house. I packed it in a carry-on suitcase, and I traveled. I had my like Brown Eat, Pray, Love moment. I traveled the world for a year, and I just got to, it was the first time I did what I wanted. Like, where I didn't check in with anyone else. It was like, I'm just going to do what I want. And long story short, by stripping away all of the things that I was told as a good immigrant daughter that I should want, that should make me happy, I was really able to find like what made me truly happy without outsourcing all of that to external things. And where I landed was being in community, supporting others to like create their dream lives. I knew I didn't want to go back in the corporate space. And I started this business. And so my liberated self now, it just feels like I'm fully living every day. Like I am just fully going for it every day. Some days I sit on the couch and I watch Netflix, but like I am really coming from a place of belief and trust in myself. And I'm so thankful because then I get to be in community here with you all. Okay. I want to create space for you all to explore your liberated vision. You've heard stories from the community, you've heard stories from Patty and myself. And, I really feel like the first step to moving towards that is to give yourself permission to explore what that even looks like for you. So I should have said this in the beginning, but if you don't have something to write with, I want to invite you to get something to write with, or open a Google Doc, whatever. And Patty, I'll hand it off to you to lead us through this.
Perfect. So as I do this, Nicole, I wonder if it's okay to prep some music so that people have some writing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You probably were already thinking that, so we're probably on TV. Okay. So as we prepare to kind of write out this liberated vision, I invite you to kind of just sit for a moment. If it feels safe, you can close your eyes. Otherwise, kind of just look a few feet in front of you. Noticing your breath. Just notice. No need to change it quite yet. And then imagine that your inhale and your exhale are like two halves of a circle. The inhale being one half, the exhale completing the circle. And with every breath, smoothing that out. As we've said, there's a cycle to this. It's not necessarily a linear process to move from survival to liberation. It's as if we're circling up and up and up. So as your breath kind of finds its way to equal from inhale to exhale, begin to take your attention off of the breath and into your imagination, the part of you that knows what it is to be liberated. Trust whatever is coming up. Notice your sensations in the body, maybe in the heart, the belly, the arms, the hands. Just notice what pops up. Notice the words that come to you. And notice any images. That liberation is there for you if you want it. You've probably already had little sparks of those feelings already in your life. And so allow this liberation to be a remembrance within your body, within your ancestors' bodies. And when you're ready to express what comes up, you can go ahead and open your eyes and go ahead and start writing.
Can I add to this real quick, Patty?
Yes.
Yeah. So as you're writing, I want to invite you to just allow whatever's coming up to be put on paper without judgment, without shame, just like exploring for yourself what that looks like for you. And I'll cue some music.
Yeah, it's all correct.
Can you hear that?
Okay, finish up. Any final thoughts, any burning things that need to be expressed, need to be written down? We'd love to open up this space to hear again from folks what would it look like for you to be liberated? What came up for you in your vision of liberation? Feel free to share in the chat or to raise your hand. I love silence. I don't know about you all, but silence means that there's something really good that's about to come. Yeah.
First, thank you for this exercise, because visioning is something that I'd love to continue practicing. And the things that came up for me were integration and the synthesis of all the different things, incredible things that I have done. And to know that although my immediate family and peanut gallery of titas don't understand the value of all my knowledge is, I know how important it is, and I am a vessel that has been guided.
Oh, I have chills. There's so many ways of knowing, and I love that you know that about yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen?
Sweaty palms. First off, I want to say thank you, Nicole, and to Miss Patty, and to Vivian, and to Ria. Thank you all so much for sharing. I appreciate it. There's two things that kind of come up for me right now, but I'm going to read the one that I wrote. And it says, I don't know why I keep seeing this, but I see myself bridging the gap between churches and religious spaces and buildings and queer spaces, to be radically liberated in my soul and my spirit, to use our bodies and identities as a way to connect each other, and to just see it as the vessel and vehicle that's holding and containing our spirits. Those are just right. Those two groups are just groups that we don't see together often, unfortunately. And I think someone who's just been a tomboy my whole life can have been shoved in certain places that I didn't even know I was being shoved in, and observing certain spaces and just really realizing, particularly in queer spaces, just how much love that they are just so desperate and thirsty for. And how if churches and religious spaces were operating the way that the core of how we're supposed to be operating, then it's a place that is, it just seems silly that we're not together, you know? But even in, you know, spaces like these, right? Like having to show up as myself, sweaty hands, you know, skipping breath, trying a weird hairstyle I've never done before, feeling like a Filipino Justin Bieber because it naturally goes this way, but I was like, what does it look like going this way? And painting my nails so messily for the first time, because my older ates and half sisters never did that for me. And to wear and put things on because that's what I want to wear, and not because this is how others have seen me my whole life, right? So yeah, I feel like being liberated for me is not having to show up and proving my worth or my value, not being overly helpful because I'm new to San Diego and I want to, you know, get into the communities, but really just knowing that I have so much to offer and I don't have to prove that to people, and that if people see it, then it will naturally align, you know, recognizing that like attracts like. And yeah, totally being okay with messy and imperfect, and not trying to be someone that seems like that they have it all together, right? So being okay, even sharing how messy it really is, and knowing the fun in that. Yeah.
To me, Kathleen, you are an example of when we liberate ourselves, we create liberation for others, because just in your being in those two spaces, and eventually to build a bridge between the two and to create your own space for all of that love to be there for, oh my, I have chills. Thank you for sharing. I think, Nicole, this is where we talk about the process, right?
Yeah, I just want to honor you, Kay Short, for sharing what you shared and for being brave. I have tears in my eyes just because it is so, it is just like an honor to witness you sharing that. So thank you. Ooh, if you have been to one of my events before, I always cry. I always cry. I can't help it. Okay, I want to be mindful of our time. I'm gonna stay on a bit longer. I want to briefly, we've explored now, like, okay, what could it look like for us? And the next natural question is like, all right, how? Like, how do I then create it? So I want to share with you a framework, a process that I have developed from thousands and thousands of hours of coaching our community. And it is meant to be cyclical. It is not meant to be linear. So the first step is to bring awareness to your oppressive beliefs and to start unlearning them. Really like knowing, okay, oh, this is why I show up this way. This is why I feel this way. And like consciously choosing which continue to serve you and which are now limiting you from moving beyond survival. Next is unlocking your true self. And what I mean by that is what you really want, who you really are, below, like underneath the achievements, outside of what people think of you, outside of the labels and the roles and identities that have been placed on top of you. Who are you at your core? And to really know that, so then you can start making decisions from that place instead of a place of, I think this is what I should be doing. Or this is what people expect me to do. So to really get to know yourself in a new way. And then the last part of that cycle is to unleash your liberated self. That is going to look different for everyone. Sometimes that looks like setting boundaries with family. Sometimes that looks like just allowing yourself to show up messily. Sometimes that looks like leaving a job that doesn't value you and finding an opportunity that better aligns with what you actually want to create. Like allowing yourself to really step into that vision that you have for yourself. And I said it's cyclical, right? So once you start taking that liberated action, you're going to come up against those beliefs again. You're going to come up against those challenges. And so we then continue to unlearn the beliefs that don't serve us, unlocking who we truly are, stepping more into our liberation. And this is a great segue into offering up and actually inviting some other folks' voices in here of like, okay, like conceptually it makes sense. Conceptually it sounds good, but what does it actually look like in practice? Like when you're in it. So I've invited a couple of my like current clients that are currently moving through this process to just share the real deal of what it's like to really start moving from survival to liberation. Lizzie, I'd love to invite you to share your story and your voice here and whatever you feel comfortable with sharing.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having this space. It's so wonderful to see all of your faces, and just to be around other Asians is heartwarming. So yeah, I'm currently in the cohort 9 program with a couple other wonderful ladies in here. And I guess my story briefly is I'm mixed race. So my dad is from Taiwan, my mom is from Spain, they are essentially like the black sheeps of their families, and they got married, met in Liverpool, moved to America. And I grew up without family essentially, because one half was in Spain, the other one was in California, and I grew up in Pennsylvania, which is a really white area. And I learned very early on that I did not belong and I looked very different. And so my survival mechanism was to succeed at everything, because if you're amazing at everything, no one can tell you you suck. So I did that, and I climbed. Oh, did I climb? And at the basically like within the middle of the pandemic, I had decided to start my own company. I started an animation company with 3 other buddies. We moved across the country. We created our own short film. And I was looking at all of my accolades in front of me, and lo and behold, I felt like shit. I felt like so alone in everything. And I'm still pretty feeling lost, so I'm gonna get emotional about it. But yeah, I think I started to realize that operating from this place of survival, I felt like a responsibility to my black sheep of a family, to be the best and to succeed and to be a guiding light for everyone. But because I grew up without family, because I grew up in a white area, I realized by the time I got to the top, there was no one here. There's no one with me, you know, which sucks. It felt like I essentially like climbed over all the people that like I wanted to share it with. So I essentially found myself in a place where it was really confusing, because like I had done the thing, I had started my own studio, I was a boss, like I couldn't find a seat at the table, so I made my own table. Like, I'm doing it, why do I still feel this way? And I think it's because I was allowing myself to be defined by success and what other people thought of me, what my mother thought of me, all these things. So yeah, I guess I came to this space and jumped into Living Bravely because I wanted to, no matter what happened, if I ended up like leaving my company or going through with it and pivoting somewhere else, I think I want to be free of this like anger, of this like loneliness, of blame. And I want to just like trust in myself and know that like no matter where I go, like I'm trying it, I'm doing it, and I'm enough. You know, I think I really connected a lot in the beginning with Nicole's story of like, I did this. Like, why do I still not feel like I'm good enough? So yeah, I'm here and I'm trying it, but I feel that I have I got a lot of stuff I'm still holding on to, a lot of hurt and stuff. Yeah. Blech. That's me.
Oof, Lizzie, thank you for sharing. So much love to you. For sharing like real time what it feels like. And I just want to like so celebrate you for choosing to challenge, like choosing to challenge the way you've been feeling and the way you've been living, and taking different action to create a new outcome. Thanks, Lizzie. So appreciate you. Tintin is also in cohort 9 with Lizzie. And Tintin, I would love for you to share your story with the group.
Sure, thank you.
So I am originally from SoCal, from Southern California, and I am now in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, or North Kakalaki, as we call it over here. I have a white stepdad, and he's been my dad for most of my life. So we decided to move over here after I was done with college. I, never thought about my Asianness, was never a topic of a discussion, did not cross my mind that I was like Asian or anything until I moved here. And I was like, there's no one here. It's all white. What is going on? And the spaces that I was in at work, at my church, just in the grocery store, there was no one that looked like me. And when I first moved here, it wasn't a big issue. It was just like I made friends. It was the same until it was not. Until I started experiencing microaggressions and racism for kind of the first time, really. I feel like in times I've faced it before, there were people to talk about it with, but like my family, like my sisters are in California, and they just won't understand because they don't live here, and they're not, in the same spaces where it's just all white. And my friends here don't understand because they're not Asian and they're not experiencing those things happening to them. So I had this like reckoning of being like, I'm Asian and being like, what do I do with that now? And what does that mean? What does that mean in my faith? Because I had to leave my church because of some of the things that were going on. And that was really hard because it was a big part of my identity. And like, it has just seeped into so many areas of my life. I tried to find a therapist here in Winston-Salem, and there were 0 Asian therapists. So I had to outsource to the town next over in Greensboro, and I found an Asian therapist there. And from there, I was like, there is a need and I would like to fill it. I was working at a mental health company, helping in administration, managing 6 clinics. And part of my job was to work with a therapist on like courses for our admin staff about trauma-informed care. So I was exposed to it. I was like kind of thinking about it. It's like, I could do this. But then that piece of like, there's a need here where if I can't find one, any other Filipinos here or any other Asians can't find one. So I want to do that. I had I quit my job and I was like, I'm going to apply to grad school. But again, my grad school that I will be going to is a historically Black grad school. And so I know that's the framework that they're going to be teaching from as well. And so there was this piece missing for me of like, I want to unravel my own identity. I don't know what it is yet as a woman of color. And I want to help other women do that. But if I don't do it first, then how can I do that? So that's one of the reasons I signed on to Living Bravely. One of the things that I'm coming up against in survival mode that I have realized is I am so afraid of women of color because like there are so many amazing women of color and I'm so intimidated by these spaces. This is one of the first times I've really like put myself into this space, and it comes from that survival mindset of competition of like, well, I can only succeed. Like you guys can't succeed because then I can't succeed. There's not enough for me. And so I think I'm really working through, like Lizzie was saying, done a lot of work of saying like, I am enough as who I am, but this whole idea that there is enough and we can all survive and be liberated together, and what that looks like is what I'm really starting to work through, and kind of the practical piece of celebrating other people. So that has been my accountability for the, a couple times is I now go on Instagram, and anytime I see a really awesome woman of color and I get that gut reaction of like, huh, like, why are you doing that? I should be doing that.
I just go, oh my gosh, you're glowing. And then I like feel that liberation of like, there is enough. I can celebrate her. And out of this, I have found that like, not only do I feel better by releasing that in that way, but I've gained opportunities, I've gained collaboration. So that has been kind of where I've been moving through. And I guess the portion of my brave in the living bravely.
Oh my gosh, Tintin, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. And so real, right? That identity piece of just realizing like, oh, like there is this side of me that is actually a really big part. And now how do I like incorporate that? What does that mean? So appreciate you sharing that. I know we are at time. I just want to keep like talking to you all and hearing from you. Um, I would, and I want to honor your time. So I would love if you could put in the chat like what your takeaway is from this, what you are receiving from this. I know we've talked a lot about living bravely. This event is, the intent is really to support you in like understanding what survival and liberation could look like. And if you want to explore that in more community like this, I would love to invite you to explore Living Bravely. I'll be sharing a link and an email after this, but really as a collective, we move through unlearning oppressive beliefs, unlocking who you truly are, unleashing your liberated self in a culturally sensitive, trauma-informed space. And so I've been running this program for almost 3 years. We're opening up cohort 10, which is crazy. We're going to hit our 100th participant in this program this year. I know, I'm going to celebrate, I'm going to cry. What I wanted to share, which is, I'm like, K-Short, when you talk about sweaty palms, it's what I'm feeling right now. Something really exciting and an expansion of this program is I've realized like this is a movement. This is not just me. This is not just my company, my work. This is a collective movement around liberation for our community. And because that requires more of us, all of us, this program is expanding for other coaches to lead their own cohorts. Not just me leading all the cohorts. And so I am so excited to have next cohort be led by Patty, who is Living Bravely alum, my life coach, and so she'll be leading it. I will still be actively a part of it. I'll be showing up at the sessions, but she's going to help continue to amplify this work, as is Elisa, who's also on this call. She's another coach, as is Christine Joy, who is on this. My vision is Living Bravely cohorts around the world being led by folks of color in their native languages. Like a Filipino cohort in the Philippines in Tagalog is just like a dream someday. And so this is the start. And so I so appreciate you being here in community. I am totally happy to hang on for any questions, for anything that's wanting to be expressed in this space. I would so love to hear like what you're receiving for yourself. Thank you, Patty, for co-leading this with me. And I just, yeah, I so appreciate you all. Cohort 10 is going to be starting in April. So we'll be kicking it off in April. You get group coaching sessions, and you get one-on-one sessions also, and just this community, like, for life, for life. Amazing. Patty, is there anything else you want to share?
Other than I'm just like dancing in my chair because I'm so excited, and I mean, this work changes the world. This work changes our inner worlds and the world that we are in, and I'm so excited to be part of it. Like I said, that silence is going to bring something big. So the fact that we had that little moment earlier, I was like, woo, like you.
Yeah, yes. Love it. Yeah, thanks for being here, Janelle. I just put the link in the chat if you want to check it out. I will also send an email with a recording of this if you want to go back. Kishore, I just want to invite you to look back at the recording and just notice how in your power you were when you're expressing that. Like, it was like tangible, like I could feel it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep saying this. Those are my words, because it's just something that, it's crazy to think about, but I think we're moving in a direction of unity and realizing that the lines that we've drawn between each other can no longer exist. It's no longer sustainable for all of us as a human race. So I don't know. I don't know when, how, when, whatever, if it comes up again, but I feel like there's obviously a need that it needs to happen. So thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to rewatching it.
Yes, yes. And there's a reason it's there. It's not just there by accident, by random. Like, there's a reason it keeps coming up for you. Yeah. Thanks for speaking power to it by speaking it aloud. Amazing. Does anyone have any questions or last thoughts that they'd like to express? Thanks, Elisa. Yeah. I'm feeling vibrations too. I'm like shaking from like just like the powerful shares in here. All right, y'all. Well, if no one else has anything they'd like to ask or share, I just want to thank you again for being here in community, for allowing yourself to explore a different option for yourself and to receive and share. And thank you for everyone who spoke, who shared their stories, who shared in the chat. Yeah, every step for us towards liberation is cumulative, and it has impacts beyond what we can see. So thank you all. Love you all. Sending you lots of love. And I'll be in touch. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.